Hi guys, my name is Janaea Sanchez, and today I'm going to be talking about the article of Trifecta of Problems for New Mexico Construction Companies. Here are some challenges caused by the pandemic. So the COVID-19 pandemic has left construction companies in New Mexico up against challenges and in need of some solutions. So in the article that I chose to evaluate, the inflation and supply chain are discussed as two main different factors that are affecting these companies by increasing the price and then also lead times of materials. So one of the main issues that these companies are confronted with is also workforce shortages. So it almost seems like every company is looking to hire nowadays. If you look around New Mexico, everyone's looking to hire. So there's not enough manpower to operate these construction companies since the pandemic because not many people have returned to work. So projects that were engineered to meet a certain magnitude a year ago have doubled in price with the new inflation and supply chain shortages. And I've seen that as a general contractor. It definitely has caused the magnitudes to increase dramatically, and the government wasn't ready for that. So working as a general contractor, as I said, I've seen at firsthand that the long lead times and the material shortages are a real thing. The government projects that were being solicited have unrealistic magnitude goals to reach. So this is because the projects were designed were a time where this inflation and supply chain shortages were a lot different than they are now. So governments, they need more funding, and that's now an issue for them, and it's something that they have to deal with. So as an estimator, um, estimators are doing their best on projects based on the drawings and specifications, but are also having to add cushion to their price increases. And also the period of performance of these projects are also being extended because of the long lead times on that material. So this also pushes projects out further than anticipated, and that also causes more funding to be needed. So over the last few months, the government has been accommodating and understanding of that material increase and the long lead times, but it still has been a struggle for these construction companies to meet that goal. So there's three factors that contribute to that supply chain disruption, and those include shipping logistics, factory delays, and increased demand. So factory delay has been affected by the pandemic because the employees could have been homesick with COVID, or they could have encountered someone and be sent home. And this caused the factories to be running behind. So a lot of the material wasn't being produced because people were at home. And then the shortage in the construction workforce is also causing problems. The industry has a shortage of 650,000 workers nationally, which is a big number. And the increase in the demand played for the long lead times because everything was shut down for a while because of the pandemic, meaning that things, when they open back up, there's a significant increase in that demand of material. Once it opened up, everyone wanted to start building and using material, and that's when the long lead times hit and the inflation. Next, I will discuss which implementations should be taken to help with the inflation and the supply chain issues. So implementations that should be considered are reflected on both the construction company's end and also as well as the government, state, or the city side. So starting off with the construction process, in order to work with the current conditions, the faster construction companies get their permits through, the faster materials and inspections can be developed for a project. So this means that once permits are submitted and approved by the government, city, or state, that means material can get ordered right away, and that will reduce the long lead times of waiting for that material during the construction start period. So another way construction companies could adjust to that supply chain disruption is by producing a project schedule that incorporates the lead times for that material to come in. So once contractors provide this schedule, the owner, such as like the government, can evaluate a period of performance based on that schedule duration. So in today's industry, companies are working against the time. So however, not only is the government aware of the increase in pricing, they're also aware of the long lead times, meaning that the more understanding they become with the work of the construction companies of getting that process started so their material can get ordered. So once they submit permits and they're aware of the lead time and the material increases, this will make it easier for the construction companies to put out a final complete construction project schedule and have it more understanding for what the government side. And then the last three ways that a company can work on improving during these shortages is by adjusting the price, prioritizing high profit margin products, and then also the shift in input as relative prices have changed. Now I'm going to be relating this article to what we have learned in class. I will discuss the crisis management plan that could be used to help construction companies throughout this process. So a crisis management approach consists of a list of actions that are taken before, during, and after an unfortunate event, such as the pandemic, that saves lives, protects property, and reduces loss of resources. So starting off, we have communication. Communication is key for any issue that directly impacts any organization. So when there is a crisis, it is important to communicate with the stockholders or any leaders, but most importantly, communicate with their employees. This leads to step 2, which is company's approach. There should be a crisis management team set up for any organization. So most of the companies here in New Mexico and all over the world were not prepared for a crisis like the pandemic, but it's not too late to prepare for this kind of occurrence. So in the article, I'm examining construction companies were affected by the pandemic, and it is essential that they communicate to their owner that there are long lead times and supply disruptions, because when these companies communicate, everyone will be on the same page and aware of the situation. This can be done using the crisis management approach to establish a plan that will benefit the employee, consumer, and the company. This leads us to step 3, which is public safety. Incorporating a crisis management plan for employees is used to ensure that the employees are safe. So it's essential through the pandemic that the companies made accommodations for work, such as working remote, and also making a good plan for their employees, accommodating their needs through the pandemic crisis can help reduce with the labor shortage and can help with not falling behind, which also was talked about in previous slides since labor shortage was such a big issue. Finally, this leads me to the response to the aftermath. So here are 4 ways that I think would help with the decreasing inflation and improving the supply chain disruptions. So first off, we have the labor shortage. With the benefits offered for unemployment, people have become used to not working, and this has caused a workforce shortage. So companies are hiring left and right, but this pandemic caused a labor shortage that doesn't seem to be getting any better anytime soon. It's already a challenge for those construction companies struggling with the inflation and the supply chain disruptions, but also adding this labor shortage on top of those factors makes it even harder for them. So our nation needs to make a change with how they are handling the pandemic. People now need to return to work, and this can help with the factory delays that were explained in the above slides. Next, we have improving communication. Companies need to communicate effectively with their employees, as explained above, and implementing better communication can lead to employees feeling safer to return to work. Because I know that safety is important and some people are struggling with feeling safe, but if they implement certain communication and crisis management plans, this should be able to do so. So now moving on to the crisis management, as explained, implementing better crisis management plans to these organizations will overall better the company, employees, and the consumers, and it is essential that these plans are put into action that follow in order to improve the crisis that's been going on. And then lastly, this leads to supply chain modifications, which can lead to decreased inflation. So to mitigate rising inflation, supply chain issues need to be addressed and fixed. Modifications must be made to fix the disruptions to the supply chain, the production, and the transportation of products. So this article evaluated the construction companies of New Mexico that are struggling to deal with the supply chain changes and also inflation. Hopefully, they adjust in order to have a successful work industry, and all of this can be fixed for the construction companies of New Mexico because they're important and we'll need them. So thank you guys for watching. And here is my final slide with the references I used. Thank you guys.